We're going to be looking at exponents and roots. The roots that we're going to be looking at are square roots, and the exponents that we're going to look at are squares. Now, if we're looking at a square root, what a square root means is what number do we multiply by itself to get 4? And the number would be 2. The square root of 4 is 2, because 2 times 2 equals 4. In the same way, the square root of 0 would be 0. For the third one, we're trying to figure out the square root of 49. So what number times itself gives us 49? And that would be 7. What we have is a 3 in front of it. So we have 3 times 7 gives us 21. Looking at our next one, what we have is the negative square root of 100. First thing that we do is we find the square root of 100. So we're looking for a number that when you multiply it by itself gives us 100. And that would be 10. So what we have is 10. Since there's a negative in the front, we put negative 10. Now this one right here is a little tricky. It's 10,000. 10,000 would be 100 times 100. So that means the square root of 10,000 would be 100. What I want you to do is just take a couple minutes and see if you can do the next 5. So if we're looking at the square root of 9, what number multiplied by itself gives us 9? And that would be 3. The square root of 1, what number times itself gives us 1? And that, of course, would be 1. What number gives us 16? So the square root of 16 would be 4. The square root of 144 would be 12. And for the next one, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to find the square root, and then we're going to multiply it by 7. So the square root of 25 would be 5, times 7 would be 35. Now, those are square roots. What we're going to be doing next is we're going to look at squares. What a square means is that we're multiplying it by itself. So this right here is the same thing as 5 times 5, which is 25. The next one is 7 times 7, which is 49. The next one is a little tricky because this negative right here is outside of it. So we're actually doing 2 squared first, which we know is 4. Then we put the negative. Now the next one, notice that the negative is inside. So we're squaring the whole thing, meaning that this is really negative 3 times negative 3. And we know that a negative times a negative is a positive. So this is a positive 9. Notice the difference. When we have the negative outside, it stays a negative. When we have the negative inside the parentheses, it becomes a positive. Now, if we're looking at this one right here, notice that the negative is outside. So this right here is similar to the one that we did over here. So we're going to square the 9 first, giving us 81. But since there's a negative, we put a negative. I'm going to have you pause the video and try those next 5. 6 squared is 6 times 6, which is 36. Negative 1 squared, remember, the negative's outside, so we square it first to get 1. Since there's a negative, this would be negative 1. 8 squared would be 8 times 8. Notice the negative is inside, so this is really negative 10 times negative 10, giving us a positive 100. Here we're squaring the inside to get 144, because a negative and negative is a positive, but there's another negative, so we put the negative right there.